On behalf of the Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center at Florida International University, I would like to welcome you to the Political Culture of Democracy in Haiti and in the Americas 2021, Taking the Pulse of Democracy. My name is Luis Guillermo Solis. I am the interim director of this center and also a former president of the Republic of Costa Rica. Today's event will discuss key findings as related to Haiti's democratic values, trust in institutions, and experiences in various dimensions of citizen security. This event is co-sponsored by the LAPOP Lab at Vanderbilt University and the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. The presentation is also part of LAC's Haitian Studies Program of Excellence, and we have an extraordinary number of participants that will enlighten us with their opinions regarding these important issues. Thank you for joining us, and I will now pass the floor over to Valerie Schweitzer Robinson, who works as statistician 2 at the LAPOP Lab at Vanderbilt University. Valerie, welcome, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Luis. As you said, my name is Valerie Schweitzer Robinson. I'm a statistician at the lab. We're so honored and excited to be working with FIU to host this event with our great panelists and speakers to bring you findings from our most recent survey in Haiti. So I'll start off just giving a little bit of background on LAPOP Lab and our projects before introducing our great speakers and panelists. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. So for those of you who may not know, LAPOP Lab is a Center for Excellence in International Survey Research. LAPOP uses gold standard scientific approaches and innovative methods in cross-national and targeted surveys, evaluations, and reports. The lab is a leader in the development, implementation, and analysis of studies of public opinion and behavior. Our core project, and maybe the most well-known project, is the AmericasBarometer, which I'll talk a bit more about in the next slide. But all of our surveys use our unparalleled quality control, which is carried out at each and every stage of survey research, from questionnaire and sample design all the way to reporting. Our research lab is housed at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, where a dedicated team of faculty, staff, postdocs, and students work year-round on the design and analysis of public opinion studies. LAPOP's network extends across the Americas, and we work in partnership with numerous academic and non-governmental organizations. These partners provide country-specific feedback on survey content, questionnaires, they conduct research with our data, and they work with us to disseminate locally. So the data today, in the presentation today, come from the AmericasBarometer, as I mentioned. This is a biennial, scientifically rigorous survey that covers most of the Western Hemisphere. From the project's conception in 2004 to our latest round in 2021, we've collected over 370,000 interviews in 34 countries. The AmericasBarometer measures attitudes, evaluations, experiences, and behavior in the Americas using national probability samples of voting age adults. Typically, data are collected through face-to-face interviews. However, in 2021, for obvious reasons, we moved to phone surveys to preserve interviewer and participant health. Through standardized methods, and a common core questionnaire allow us to make valid comparisons across countries and over time on topics including the economy, rule of law, state capacity, and many more. Our data and our reports are all available for free on our website as well. In 2021, the AmericasBarometer took place early last year, so we interviewed participants in 22 countries across the region, conducting about 3,000 interviews per country. As mentioned, this last round was conducted using phone interviews, and training and pre-testing were both carried out virtually. The Haiti report is available now. It's live on our website at this link, but today you'll be hearing results from this report. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our panelists and our speaker. So we have fantastic panelists today, including Dr. Cristobal Dupouy, who is a special representative of SG, Organization of American States in Haiti, and Dr. Roody Reserve, who's the director of the master's program in political science at the Universidad Centroamericana José Simeón Cañas, as well as our terrific speaker, Dr. François Gélineau, who is the Vice Rector of International Affairs and Sustainable Development at Université Laval. So I'll pass things on now to Dr. Gélineau to talk more about the findings.
Thank you very much, Valerie. You can skip to slide number 11, which you can go on. I'll start with this one. Okay. So first I wish, I'm really happy to be here. It's always much fun to talk about Haiti, and despite the very difficult situation, and especially talk about the wealth of data we gathered over the past few decades with LAPOP. I apologize. I will be asking Valerie to flip the pages of the presentation due to a technical problem I'm presenting over my iPhone. Before I walk you through the Haiti chapters of the report, let me make two brief comments. First, I'd like to underscore the fact that LAPOP over, as I said, the past 20 years has made a great contribution to the understanding of public opinion in the Americas overall by thoroughly documenting the political culture of participating countries, and that since the early 2000s. And I have to say that it is especially true for Haiti. LAPOP is the only reliable source of public opinion data in the country that covers such a long period of time. In Haiti, we've been surveying Haitians since 2006. Many Haitian intellectuals have often told me that it is impossible to reliably measure public opinion in the country. I truly believe that LAPOP offers that the LAPOP data offers a tangible proof that this is not the case. My second comment is that, as you will see, the report that we're releasing today offers quite a critical portrait of the Haitian culture. After 3 decades of democratic practice, the country is still very fragile. With many indicators showing recent deterioration, it's a difficult read. However, this glance into the democratic culture of Haitians can serve as a roadmap to those invested in building the Haiti of tomorrow, where some will see challenges, others will see opportunities for improvement. This is, at the very least, our intention. My presentation will be divided in 3 sections. The first will cover democracy as a concept and how people perceive democracy in Haiti. The second section will explore trust in political institutions, and the last section will explore human security issues. Regarding democracy, since 2006, the Economist Intelligence Unit has been ranking countries of the world along characteristics of their political system. Electoral process, pluralism, functioning of government, political participation, democratic political cultures, and civic liberties are all items that they've been looking at. Since the inception of the Democracy Index from the Economist Intelligence Unit, the organization has consistently ranked Haiti among the 4 worst democratic performers in the hemisphere, placing the country only above Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. Valerie, you can move on to the following slide. Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. Along the same logic, LAPOP has been asking consistently a question that states, democracy may have problems, but it is better than any other form of government. In 2021, less than 50% of Haitians expressed support for democracy. As illustrated by the figure you're seeing right now, after reaching a peak at around 75% in 2012, the level of support for democracy has steadily declined to a historical low of 45.5%. This is to say that more than half of Haitians expressed doubts about democracy as the best form of government. Next slide. The figures that you're seeing now is another measure of democracy. It asks people, it's the answer to the question about whether people are satisfied with the way democracy works in the country. The figure shows that satisfaction with democracy has hovered around 35 or 45% between 2006 and 2014, after which it has dropped significantly. Today in Haiti, satisfaction with democracy is at 11%. Which is significantly lower than it has been over the past few years. Next slide. Another way to measure how people relate to democracy is to measure their tolerance over the idea of a coup d'etat. The question that we're looking at is a question asking people whether under some circumstances, here mainly corruption, are coup d'etat justified? According to the figure we're seeing right now, tolerance for this non-democratic response to high level of corruption has increased significantly over time. We've been measuring this item in Haiti since 2012, and as you can see, tolerance over coup d'etat has increased quite a lot over the past 10 years, reaching a level of 45%, which is to say that almost half of every one Haitian out of two would consider coup d'etat justifiable under some circumstances. Slide. When we compare that to the rest of the hemisphere, we see that the trend is quite different. In the region as a whole, it is about 40% of the people that tend to agree with the statement. The number of countries, including in the AmericasBarometer, has increased over time. But if we just look at the initial countries that are covered throughout the period, we can see that the level of support for coup d'etat is mainly stable. So Haiti is going counter trend to the rest of the region. Next slide. Another way of measuring tolerance for non-democratic behavior is asking people whether they believe the executive can suspend the activities of parliament in order to restore peace or to manage the country. In Haiti, the trend has followed the regional upward tendency, but with a sharper ascension. In 2010, the Haitian level of tolerance for that kind of coup was about 13%. It moved to 22% in 2012, 26% in 2014, 30% in 2018, and is at a level of 44% in 2021. It is important to note that the regional level or the regional average is about 30%. Next slide. When we ask countries whether we did experiments in the survey where we offer respondents two possibilities, dichotomy of possibility, one being the provision of basic services to every citizen versus some democratic right. Here we look at two different democratic rights, which is functioning elections, free and fair elections, versus the freedom of speech. What we can see is that majorities in many countries are willing to give up holding elections in exchange for guaranteed income and services. In contrast, only a minority in each country is willing to give up freedom of expression for the same guarantees. Haiti appears towards the bottom of these two measures. Compared to most other countries, Haitians appear less willing to sacrifice elections and freedom of expression for guaranteed basic income and services, even though they also express high levels of dissatisfaction with their democratic system. Next slide. As we can see, and unfortunately we didn't ask these questions in the past, but in the most recent wave, we asked people whether they believe, Haitians, whether they believe their country was a democracy. And almost 2/3 of them answered that no, Haiti is not a democracy. If we move to the second section on trust in political institutions, one thing we can say is that in their simplest form, democracies consist of a set of rules designed at selecting freely those that will govern. Yet for these rules to work, citizens need to have faith that the rules are fair. When citizens do not abide by the rules of the game, the systems fail. Democratic legitimacy resides in the ability of the system to convey confidence. When citizens perceive institutions and political actors as being trustworthy, they are more inclined to respect laws, they display higher levels of interest in politics, and they are more active democratic participants. The Americas Barometer contains several questions that allow us to document the different dimensions of trust in political institutions. The three first charts that I'll show you, and we can move, thank you. The first figure shows, indicates the response to a very general questions, whether people trust, they display pride in their political system. This figure shows that Haitians are among the least trusting citizens of the Americas towards their political institutions. With only 28% of them claiming to be proud of living under the political system of their country. Haitians come next to last in the region, just ahead of Brazil at 25%. It is to note that the regional average is about 44%. Next slide. Another general question is whether people support the political system broadly. In Haiti, 40% of citizens support their political system. Again, standing next to last, ahead of Brazil at 38%. The regional average level of support for the country's political system is at 52%. Next slide. Haitians are among those in the Americas with the lowest level of trust in elections. In 2021, only 2 countries displayed a lower score on that variable. With a level of trust in elections at 27%, Haitians compare favorably only to Honduras at 23% and Colombia at 22%. The regional average is at 41%. Now, next slide, if we cross trust in election with the variables that one variable that we showed earlier, which is I believe that my country is a democracy, we see that those who believe Haiti is a democracy trust elections at 37%, while those who don't believe democracy is a democracy only trust elections at 21%. The relationship holds even when we control for other socio-demographic variables. Next slide. If we now break down the trust in elections, interpersonal trust, whether people have confidence in other people, we can look at people with a higher level of interpersonal trust are generally older citizens. They are generally male, with less education, less wealthy. So it gives us an indication of how this broad measure of trust is distributed among the population. Sorry. In Haiti, it's very interesting. I mean, when we look at approval of the president or the opinion about the president job performance, we see that Haitians tend to rally behind their president, at least at the beginning of the presidential term. And then it declines throughout the mandate. This is what this chart shows, showing if we were to cross the different tenure of the different presidents, we would see that they start high and much lower, with maybe one exception with Michel Martelly, who started his mandate quite high and finished his mandate at a reasonably high level. If we look at tenure of Jovenel Moïse, the President who was assassinated about exactly a year ago, he started his mandate with very high level of approval of his job performance. And just weeks before he was assassinated, the level was at 36%. Now, when we look at another dimension of trust, which is how people perceive the effectiveness of their government, we in the survey are able to compare whether people trust the national and their local government. We see that Haitians are among the least trustful in the region when asked whether they believe the national government is doing the right thing or whether they trust a local or municipal government. The level of trust in the national government in Haiti stands at 37%. The regional average is 48%. As for trust in the local or municipal government, Haiti comes last with a level of trust at 23%, while the regional average is at 41%. Corruption is also has an impact on people's trust of the authorities. The figure that you're looking at shows that Haitians are comparatively not very exposed to bribe requests from police officers, at least in their perception. In 2021, only 4% of Haitians reported being asked for a bribe by the police. The regional average is 10%. And 15 countries report higher scores than Haiti. At the opposite end of the spectrum, we find Mexico, where police bribes are reported by 1 person out of every 4. The same figure shows that 10% of Haitians report being asked to pay a bribe by a government employee. The regional average is 6%, and only 7 countries report higher scores. Finally, half of Haitians believe that building would require a bribe. This is another measure of how people relate to the institutions. The figure shows that Haitians are relatively less inclined than most citizens of the Americas to believe that they will be asked to pay a bribe when they do renovation or construction on a private residence. Only 50% of them thought so, compared to a regional average of 61%. When breaking down the variable into its original categories, we see that only 7% of Haitians think they are very likely to be asked to pay a bribe to renovate their house, which is fairly low. And now let me turn to the third and last section. In its 2021 report, Human Rights Watch reported that Haiti was probably facing its worst outbreak of violence since 1986. The authorities' incapacity to control crime on its territory has led to a recent increase in violence, with entire sectors of Port-au-Prince in which the police force has no effective control. Drug trafficking is also to blame for the high level of insecurity in the country. How does that translate into the survey? Well, first, in 2001, the first and foremost concern of Haitian citizen is the issue of security. When we ask people what they believe is the most important problem facing the country, 45% of them believe that security is the main issue, followed by the economy at 10%, politics at 9%, and basic services at 4%. While only 4% of Haitians reported the coronavirus crisis as the most important problem facing the country, COVID-19 made it to the top of the list for 33% of respondents in the region as a whole. This is not to say that COVID has not hit Haiti, but it certainly has not been the main concern of the population. Interestingly, if we look the relative weight of economic and security issues over time, as showed in the graph, one can see that the two issues seem to be inversely related. In Haiti, the relative importance of these two issues seem to alternate over time. As we sent a previous figure, in 2021, 45% of respondents are concerned with insecurity, while only 10% with the economy. In contrast, in the previous wave of the AmericasBarometer in 2017, 12% of respondents identified security as being the most important problem, with 54% believing the economy was the most pressing issue. This would be consistent with the harsh reality described in the introduction. The recent years have seen a massive increase in crime in various parts of the country. This could explain why insecurity has surpassed economic hardship. Of course, it does not imply that the economic situation has necessarily improved, which is not the case. The survey question simply reports individual perception of the relative importance of these issues. And as you can see over time, they evolved inversely. The year 2021 is also the worst in Haiti since the start of the AmericasBarometer economically. As this figure shows, the number of respondents claiming that their economic conditions have worsened over the past year has been steadily rising for the past 10 years. In 2012, 31% of Haitians could be placed in that category. At that time, the regional average was 26. The fact that 2021 is the worst year since the AmericasBarometer first asked Haitians about their economic conditions may be explained by the sum of tragedies over the past 2 decades. In addition to the earthquake of January 2010, the country has suffered through numerous devastating hurricanes and tropical storms, some of them causing major landslides. The pandemic is among the last trauma to have hit the island. Even before the pandemic, many concluded that despite billions of dollars of having been spent in rebuilding the country, Haiti has not yet recovered from the massive destruction it experienced in January of 2010. But clearly, the worldwide economic slowdown that accompanied COVID-19 pandemic has contributed to exacerbate the financial difficulties reported by Haitians in the 2021 barometer. Next slide. In Haiti in 2021, 62% of the respondents report that they ran out of food during the previous quarter. As the figure shows, the situation has worsened significantly since 2012, when 42% of Haitians claimed to have suffered food shortage. If we compare that to, I thought I had a country region-wide comparison. But if we move to a feeling of insecurity, although it had been declining between 2006 and 2010, the year of the earthquake, it has been growing ever since. Interestingly, feeling of insecurity among Haitians have reached their highest level since the question was first asked in the AmericasBarometer. In that sense, the year 2021 is a landmark for insecurity in Haiti. I have 2 slides left, Lindsay. Haitians have been migrating out of the country Haitians have been migrating out of the country for decades. In the 1960s, they fled the authoritarian Duvalier regime. Later, during the 1980s, they were seeking better economic opportunities. In 2010, the Haitian diaspora was estimated at about 2 million people distributed around the world. The 2010 earthquake brought a new wave of Haitian migrants who lost everything in the disaster. It is not all that clear. I'm still at the, It is not all that clear that poor economic conditions or higher level of insecurity directly lead citizens to seek a better life by leaving the country. Migration is more often the result of a complex combination of factors. Yet it might be the case that intentions to migrate be associated with economic hardship and feeling of insecurity. At 74%, Haitians clearly stand at the top of the chart, followed by Jamaica at 59%, Honduras at 54%, and Nicaragua at 52%. All 4 countries are the only countries with more than half of the respondents indicating a desire to leave the country. In the region, on average, about 2 persons out of 5, so 39%, say they intend to leave their country. As I said in the introduction, the report offers a very critical portrait of the Haitian political culture. Yet, given recent events, the contrary would have been quite surprising. I hope this overview can help those committed to Haiti to think of ways in which democracy can take root in the country. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be glad to and available to answer any questions after my colleagues' interventions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, François, for that great presentation. I think the first one to go of our panelists will be Dr. Dupouy, so take it away.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you, LAPOP, for this beautiful event and very interesting work that you've done. And I would just like to congratulate the people that this exercise. These are difficult times in Haiti. When I was aware that you guys were trying to make a report again in Haiti, I didn't think that you would be able to finish it, and you did. And I have to recognize that wonderful job that you guys did in very, very difficult situations here on the ground. So I'd just like to thank all the team there at Vanderbilt University and the people in LAPOP. So thank you so much. This report is full of information. I was reading it last week and over the weekend. I mean, we can talk about hours, days. It's a trove of information, which for us that we work in Haiti and in the Americas, it is something that is extremely interesting. It's sad also to read the report, because at the end of the day, they show the shortcomings of Haiti. The shortcomings of Haiti, they're not new. I would say that they've been, for the past 30-something years. So I'll just dig into what my area of expertise is, more towards democracy and the institutions themselves. So, of course, the support of democracy in the region is going, a downward spiral. In Haiti, I believe it's the lowest of the region, and this is what this publication shows. The satisfaction of democracy in Haiti, I think, is the lowest, 11%, and it's something that it rung the bell, because at the OES we just finished the Summits of the Americas, and we're on the 9th Summit of the Americas. And I remember the first Summit of the Americas was in 1994 in Miami, and the theme of that summit was delivering the benefits of democracy. So, 30-something years down the road, how did we fare? How did we fare on benefiting the benefits of democracy in the Americas, in different countries? And what this report shows is that there's a lot of frustration of how institutions that work, of how democracy has under-delivered, I would say, and how we plan to move forward. So we can, in Haiti, we can discuss about all these crises. We can discuss about humanitarian crisis. We can talk about economic crisis, the security crisis that we've had. We can talk also about the food insecurity. 46% of the population that is in food insecure. It is extremely grave, and that has some social and political repercussions. But the underlying fact is that Haiti is currently undergoing a deep, deep political crisis. And this political crisis is not new to Haiti. One can even argue that all the other crises that Haiti has stem from the political crisis. This constant state of political turmoil has been one of the constants since the return of democracy in 1987. So for me to read all this new information that, for example, 40% of the Haitians believe that Haiti is not a democracy. Trust in political institutions is 28%, one of the lowest in the region. 20% pride in the political system. Trust of the elections, 28%. That is as low as you can get. And the lowest, certainly the lowest in the region. So you need to look, backwards. How did we got here? That's, I think, very interesting question that I was asking myself while I was reading the report. So since 1987, we always say that it's 35 years of democracy, because it opened a new era in Haiti, and that might be true. But once you start going a bit deeper, you come with unfortunate information. So Haiti during that period has elected 10 presidents, and at the same time, during the same period, they agreed to negotiate other 11 interim governments. So, and presidents with the results that we all know, right? So that's why I'm not surprised when I read that, less than 30% of people, believe that democracy, that Haiti is a democracy. I'm just putting in a shorter perspective. I've been here 4 years in Haiti as special representative of the Secretary General. So I had to deal with how many? 5 prime ministers, 4 different chiefs of police, and more than 50 ministers. And that's Haiti. And that's extremely difficult to do any public policy, right? And it's very difficult for international organizations such as ours to do anything at the end of the day, because everything changes constantly in Haiti. So, but these issues, I would say, are not new to Haiti, but I do believe we find ourselves in a new crossroad, right? The negotiation in democracy, it's something that is intrinsic to democracy, and we believe that's something healthy. But every time that we negotiate democratic mandates, we see the premature end of electoral terms, and we have political compromises. You have the results that we have in the LAPOP, study: lack of trust of the elected, lack of trust of the institutions, and a deceit on what democracy was all about. All that dream of that third wave of democratization that we saw in Latin America and certainly in Haiti, we thought that would usher a new era. 35 years down the road, it's brutal. It's brutal to do an analysis on Haiti. When you compare Haiti to other countries in the hemisphere on human development, let's say, Haiti is the last one of the hemisphere. That's nothing new. But the difference between Haiti and the second last is abysmal. So we see Haiti really, se décrocher, as we say in French, really taking a step backwards. And in comparison to the rest of the Americas, the asymmetries are becoming deeper and deeper. So we can say that one of the things that I understand on the results of this survey is that the lack of trust, not only for the authorities but also through the people on the institutions and democracy, is a result of 35 years of democratic shortcomings. The success, I would say, of the permanent transition from in Haiti is just remarkable. 35 years and 11 transitions underline the competence who really, while defending democracy, wanted their way. And what's their way? That's without the presence of the main interesting party, which is the people and the citizens of Haiti. So people have lost trust on the institutions, have lost trust on the politicians, have lost trust on the political parties. And the way to do politics in Haiti, one could argue that is, anti-democratic. Because, you go for elections, you don't, accept the results. Whenever someone wins an elections, you try to shorten their mandate in order to have a transition, a long transition, 2-3 year transition, etc. So that's where we're now. And that is not history. I'm talking about what's happening nowadays in Haiti. We are in the midst of another negotiation, of another transition, governments without the legitimacy of the elected, trying to govern a country which is not complicated, complex, extremely complex, I would say. So as I would say that the political framework is at best flawed. We have more than 250 or something political parties in Haiti, and that doesn't help to bring about certain, order on the political framework. And all of this is based more on personal power and how we get to power. Interesting point that you mentioned in the report is that the support of tolerance for executive coups in Haiti, which has gone up fourfold, right, since 2010, 44%, from 13%, right? Tolerance of military coups, 45% from 11% in 2010. The issue with parliaments, right? That in Haiti is one of the lowest countries that support those institutions, because at the end of the day, they become inconsequential. Whenever you have, for example, mayors and elected and parliaments, that people, those institutions are at best dysfunctional when they shouldn't be. When you would have everyone who's elected and a functioning parliament is at best dysfunctional when it's supposed to work. And the strange thing is that every 4 to 6 years, you have parliaments that actually do become dysfunctional because elections cannot be made, right? Because in Haiti, you have to negotiate every election. Again, the issue of negotiating the terms, right? Which is something that in the Americas it doesn't happen as much as it does in Haiti. So here we are once again trying to figure out how we move forward. Certainly, the issue that LAPOP addresses goes way beyond a simple picture at a certain time. What I like about the LAPOP is that you can go back in time and see the tendency, right? We have a beautiful corp of information, a body of information that it would be interesting to actually do a study, how things have evolved in Haiti. I just don't want to take much more time. I think I still have a few minutes left, but certainly that is one of the issues. I just want to say about to talk about two things about the corruption. I would say in Haiti, yes, Haiti. The perception of corruption is one of the highest in the world. Certainly one of the highest in the Americas. There was I think one of those questions that LAPOP asked about the bribe in police, and it's one of the lowest in the Americas. So I think it hides a few other things. I think we're not talking in Haiti about petty corruption. What we're talking about Haiti is grand scheme corruption, Petrocaribe, and all of those things, right? So we're talking billions and billions of money that has been funneled through Haiti at the top echelon, I would say, of society. So probably that's not very well reflected on asking a question about corruption and see, if you had a bribe in Haiti. The second thing is, yes, we do know the shortcomings of Haiti regarding corruption. And I think that's important to address them. But another thing is to address is what other countries are doing to stem the corruption issue in Haiti. Most of the money of corruption in Haiti is not being spent in Haiti. It's being spent in other countries throughout the hemisphere. So that also has I think, cause and effect that should be looked at, more carefully. It's very easy to say that a country has weak, institutions and the country is corrupt. That might be a given. But the other thing is countries that do have stronger rules of law. What are they doing to stem that corruption coming from a weak country like Haiti? And I think that's a question worth looking into. But anyways, I think my time is up. I just want to leave the time for the other participants and for the questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cristobal. I did want to remind the audience that if you have questions, you can pop them into the Q&A section into Zoom, and we will either answer them live or answer them in the Q&A section. So I will pass things over now to Dr. Reserve.
I thank you. Thank you for having me and to give me this opportunity to make some comments on the study on political culture in Haiti. And in my time, I will try to do two things. First, I will add a little bit on the context, political, economic, and social context in which this study has been done. And I'll try to answer another question myself and trying to understand why is satisfaction with democracy is so low, and why we moved from 75% of support for democracy, or 68% in 2006, to now the lowest level of support of democracy. And the first thing, we already heard that the context is very complicated. We are talking about social unrest now, and when we conducted the study, the instability, political instability, dire economic situation, poverty, inequalities, natural disasters, people who want to leave the country, and widespread violence, and gangs that have effective control of large parts of the country, and widespread corruption, big and small corruption, and with no political institutions. And even when, before the assassination of the president, we can say also no functioning government. So with this background, because we know that everyone expects political institutions, political system to deliver, to respond to the demand of the citizen. So we can understand that it's no wonder that people in Haiti don't support democracy, or they don't feel, they are not satisfied with democracy. So now we say, okay, 11% of Haitians are satisfied with democracy. If, as some political scientists think, that the robustness of a democracy depends on the degree to which its citizens commit to democratic principles of government, so we can clearly conclude that the future prospect of democracy is not bright in Haiti. But I think we are putting too much pressure on citizens with this quote, because in my view, when we want to analyze the prospect of democracy in Haiti, we need also to take into account the commitment of elites and political elite, economic elite, and foreign elites in democracy in Haiti. So we can't, I think we're asking too much to the citizen when we want them when we want to explain the robustness of democracy with the support for democracy. I think in Haiti we need to factor or see the role elites play in this situation, because since 1986, what we have seen is that the investment of elites, economic, political, and international elite in Haiti is an investment in weak institutions, repression, in order to avoid the key thing, I think, that we need to into account in analyzing democracy in Haiti, is the problem of redistribution. Because what we are seeing today in Haiti, it's the decision that elites took in 1986 after the dictatorship of the Duvaliers to avoid the question of redistribution. And the unwillingness to make any concession toward redistribution give us this situation. I was saying before Cristobal talked about the president, the elected president in Haiti, and a situation of transitions. We had 7 presidents elected in Haiti, from Maniga to Jovenel Moïse, and we remembered Maniga and Aristide twice could not finish their mandate. And in the case of Aristide, twice, Preval, Martelly, and Jovenel Moïse, we see clearly the problem of redistribution. And I think this is we must take into account this thing, because I mean this idea of the unwillingness of elites to make concessions toward redistribution, if we want to understand the situation in Haiti. I think we need, in this sense, more investigation into the relationship between elite behavior and public attitude, and try to see how the commitment of one or other help to solidify democracy. Yeah, in this sense, like I was saying, I can hypothesize that in the case of Haiti, that political, economic elites with the support of foreign actors have been the ones that do not support democracy. And we can dissociate how the public evaluate democracy, institutions, with the attitude of elites for these same institutions. We see the relationship between support for democracy over time and the political situation in the country. For example, we see in 2006, with the election of Preval, people, the public were supporting democracy. We saw that also in 2012 with the government of Michel Martelly. And we see, for example, with the transition and the Jovenel Moïse, people lost confidence in democracy because they were giving low evaluation. They were evaluating very badly the performance of the president. So for example, between 2010 and 2012, even in the context of the massive earthquake, hurricanes that destroy the country, and the incapacity of the government to bring help to the citizens, support for democracy was fairly high. On average, 69.5% of Haitians expressed support for democracy. But support for democracy began to decline in 2014 in the context of turmoil and dispute between the elite for how they control the political situation. The study also showed that Haitians have high expectation toward democracy, but they want democracy to solve their problem. But in terms of what Haitians are willing to sacrifice, as we can see happening elsewhere in the region, majority prefer a system that guarantees basic income, services, over election, but not over freedom of speech. And I was presenting last month the study for El Salvador, and I think we can see a parallel between what we're seeing in Haiti and what we are seeing in El Salvador. For example, today, for every expert in El Salvador, we have been a worsening of a political institution and democratic institution in El Salvador. But compared to other countries in the region, in El Salvador, satisfaction and support for democracy is higher in compared to the rest of the region. What we can see, people think their government, namely this president, is doing what other have not done for the country. So I think we need to take this situation in perspective and to see what people want from the political system. What are they asking from their president? I think as in other countries, people want the political system to guarantee a decent living and at the same time guarantee freedom of speech. And it is interesting, and I'm quoting the study, that said that compared to most other countries, Haitians appear less willing to sacrifice election and freedom of expression for guaranteed basic income and services. It is interesting to see that because when you compare, let's say, for example, in El Salvador, you have many people saying that they would be willing to sacrifice a election or freedom of expression if that can guarantee a good and decent living for them. But in Haiti, people are not willing to sacrifice election. I mean, a freedom of expression for basic income and services, even though they are expressing high level of dissatisfaction with their democratic system. So I think we need to take that into perspective, maybe in a comparative study, and to try to untangle what is happening, what in the end people are saying about democracy. Haitians want to elect their representative and expect that these leaders are up to the task without interferences from other political, economic, or international influences. And I think this is very important because if we try to move from a conception of democracy only as a political system, and we try to see that the redistributive part of democracy, we can see that since 1986, this question, the political system in Haiti, even the support of the international community, have not been able to address this situation. What level of redistribution are the elites willing to accept and to offer to the citizen in order to have political stabilities? I think this is a key question, and maybe the next thing we need to do, I'm not asking LAPOP to do that, but maybe another study would be to try to read what elites, Haitian elites, are thinking when they talk about democracy, what they think about redistribution. And we see it at the beginning, it was the economic elites that were trying to manipulate political elites to not make the concession. But now we see that political elites also live within corruption and with the support of the economic elites, and to avoid addressing the problem of democracy. So I will leave it at this because my time is up, and we'll be happy to maybe discuss it further if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for those great comments, both Dr. Reserve and Dr. Dupouy. We unfortunately do have to come to a hard stop right at 2 because a couple of you are meeting with some FIU students now to discuss these results further. So thank you so much, everyone. We've We've been answering questions in the Q&A, but unfortunately do need to stop the fruitful discussion here. So thank you, Dr. Gélineau, for your great presentation. Thank you to FIU for co-hosting this event with LAPOP Lab. And thank you to USAID for co-sponsoring the event. And thank you, lastly, for all the attendees and everyone for your time and your attention this afternoon. And we appreciate you being here. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.